Happy Wednesday, Wildcat fans, and thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats. I'm your host, Mike Luke. All right, we got a lot to get to this show. We're going to talk about Arizona athletics, where the next step is for the Wildcats, what we should expect, and a smorgasbord of other opportunities. Let's get started here on Locked On Wildcats.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats. I'm your host, Mike Luke. All right, we got a lot to get to here. Let's first and foremost talk about what Arizona's next move is. Now, we've been talking about this from day one. We need Arizona in the Big 12. Now, again, I get that there's a lot of folks out there that say, I don't want to move. It's too difficult. Well, you know what? Sometimes when you're in a bad marriage, as somebody that's never been married, I can tell you that sometimes you need to move on and get a fresh start. That's what Arizona needs to do for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, let's be honest here. The Pac-12 stinks. I really don't know how else to put it right there. It's run by a bunch of presidents and chancellors that don't care about sports, and not only do they not care about sports, they're tolerant of sports, I would assume, is the best way that I could put it. Now, the best thing about all of this is, so one thing I will say is, but there is a couple things. Sorry about that. I was just getting a text about Arizona. A couple things with Arizona. There's a disconnect. Because Bobby Robbins clearly cares about sports, while a good percentage of these Pac-12 presidents do not care about sports. And not only do they not care about sports, I think they view it as something that's almost kind of a thing for jocks and, stuff like that. Who really likes sports? That kind of setup right there, those kind of folks. We don't like that. Especially, too, when you look at Cal, when you look at Stanford, when you look at a bunch of, let's be honest here. Cal is at the pretty much the precipice right now of schools that don't care at all about sports, and that's a problem. I don't care what anybody says. That's a problem. When you have an entity that does not like sport or that doesn't care, it's hard for everybody to pull their own weight then. Let's talk about Stanford a little bit. You got Stanford. Jared Haas is still their coach. Jared Haas sucks. And, I'm sure he's a nice guy, but he's not a good coach. He's been there 8 years, and every year they're under 500. Yet, let's keep him around. In good conferences, that doesn't happen because good conferences want good product. Now, a couple things here to keep in mind about all this is that it's not just the high and mighty snobby schools right there. It is a couple other schools as well. ASU. Listen, I graduated from the U of A. A lot of people went to the U of A, ASU. Arizona and ASU are very, very similar schools. Nobody is going to confuse Arizona and ASU with Cal and Stanford. Again, that's not a slight. That's not a put down to the good folks at Cal or at Arizona and Arizona State, but those are elite level institutions right there. Arizona is a good school, no doubt about it, but it's still more of kind of in that top 100 university realm, which there's nothing wrong with that. You get a lot of research dollars, you got good grad programs, et cetera, but it's not Northwestern. So people need to stop acting like that. Nor is Arizona's proximity to the Big 12 going to bring down their academic profile. It just won't. A couple things right now are that you need to be able to get everything in order. You need to be able to get all of your ducks in a row. A couple things. Well, first and foremost is that Arizona is a basketball school. We all know that Arizona is a basketball school. Again, I'm not breaking any news to you right there. because you're all smart. You're all smarter than me, that's for sure. And you all know that Arizona is a basketball school. Guess what's not a basketball conference? The Pac-12. And not only is it not a basketball conference, again, it's more of a, well, I guess we'll put up with it type stuff right there. That's nonsense. We don't like that here, nor should we like that. Now, a couple other things to keep in mind as well. You look at the Big 12, it is the best basketball conference. You got Kansas, you got Baylor, you got Houston joining in, you got Cincinnati, you got Oklahoma, or you got Kansas State, TCU, on and on down the list. And if they add UConn, they'll have the last 3 national champions there. I mean, it kind of speaks for itself, let's be honest. And a lot of these schools aren't going anywhere. So that is a very nice little aspect to be able to dangle right there. Now, a couple things that you need to keep in mind are that Brett Yormark, Big 12 commissioner who took over, he is big time. And not only is he big time, he's a dude who just gets it. There's so many people here that I do think are – there's so many people here that, that think that, well, our academic standards won't be nearly as good or this and that. It's going to be the exact same. So don't worry about it. Now let's go back to the Pac-12 for a second here. How are we in this spot? Well, again, we are in there because you have administrators that don't care about sports. That is a problem. That's not a good thing. And not only do they not care about sports, they're kind of also in that realm where, it's all right. I guess we'll put out a product there just to put out a product, but we really don't want to put out a product. And that's essentially kind of how this happens. Larry Scott's a perfect example. Larry Scott was inept. Larry Scott was a terrible conference commissioner. Not only was he a terrible conference commissioner, he was a guy who, let's be honest here. He was rubber stamped. By a group of people who were, let's be honest here, like we just talked about, didn't really care about sports. And that's kind of where we're at. And that's also why expansion didn't occur. Expansion didn't occur because of a variety of different avenues. But the first and foremost is that not only did it not occur, but you had obviously good academic institutions that wanted to join here. Not only did they want to join here, they wanted to be part of the Pac-12. But, come on. It just kind of is what it is on that one. So that's definitely something to keep in mind when you look forward and you're going to where the Big 12, Pac-12, where the Big 12, all of that is, that you got a bunch of people here at the leadership that don't really care. And bringing in George Kliavkoff, we're going to talk about that here in just a minute, because I think that is also emblematic and where it shows why Arizona needs to make that next move. But first, LinkedIn. All right, let's talk a little bit here about LinkedIn. LinkedIn.com, LinkedIn College. All right, now, everybody has known somebody that has gotten a job through LinkedIn. I know someone, you know somebody, we all know somebody that has gotten a job through LinkedIn. And we also know probably somebody that hired somebody through LinkedIn. It's because it works. So check it out, linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Again, just a great spot to be. And on top of that, a lot of folks there that have gotten jobs. It works. And the reason it works is because it is a community. It's a bunch of people pulling together, doing their own thing. And that's what's cool about it. All right, we're going to take a quick break and then come back. And we're going to talk about the next segment. We're going to talk about the inevitability of Arizona and what ASU possibly needs to do. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats. I'm your host, Mike Luke. Thanks for making this your first listen of the day. All right, now, Arizona ASU. We just talked about it. I blame Michael Crow for a lot of the situations Arizona's in. And rightfully so, because, again, Michael Crow he's done a very good job academically at ASU. There's no doubt about it. He's done a good job. But, from a football or a football and basketball perspective, he doesn't care about sports. I'll give you a perfect example. Bobby Hurley was talking about how he thinks that they need a facilities upgrade. And Michael Crow jumps in and says, no, we don't need a facilities upgrade, any of that. You'll be just fine. If anybody's ever been to whatever the gym's name is now, it's terrible. It stinks. You don't want to be there, and nobody else wants to be there as well. Which it's not an inviting environment. How about that? So that's something to certainly keep in mind. The other thing that we need to also talk about, though, is that does Arizona State want to stay in the Pac-12? I believe they do. And the reason I believe that Arizona State wants to stay in the Pac-12 is they view themselves as a premier academic institution, and I think that they can cobble something good enough out there for people to stick around. And by cobbling something good enough, I'm saying that they try to rationalize Arizona State, Utah, Oregon State, Washington State. Then you maybe bring in San Diego State, some other, mid-level stuff. Then you have the so I think that's what they want to do. And then, they rationalize it as being good enough. But I'll tell you what, if you're into sports, you would know that that's not good enough. And not only is it not good enough, it's also it's just not. I mean, it's just not. And on top of that, we need to really kind of be here at the point where Arizona needs to know what's best for itself. And there are certainly different interests involved between Arizona and ASU. And those differences, like I said, are immense. Bobby Robbins likes, and again, I know a lot of people beat up Bobby Robbins for it. I don't care. I like a president that is front and center at big Pac-12 basketball games. He likes being at the tournaments. He likes being seen, and I'm totally cool with that. To me, I'm much more okay with that than having somebody like I'm much more okay with that than having somebody like let's be honest here, Michael Crow, who isn't at any of these events. And not only is he not at any of these events, he's, like I said, he doesn't really want to show up there. And that's just kind of the way it is. With Bobby Robbins, he wants to be there. So Bobby Robbins knows in the grand scheme of things where Arizona athletics is because he's there front and center. He also knows that Arizona basketball runs this town. Again, that's not a slight to Arizona football at all because Arizona football is making huge leaps right now. We can all see that. But he also does know that Arizona basketball is what this city cares about. And in the Pac-12, without the LA schools, with the Northwest schools looking to leave, there's essentially nothing right there. It becomes even worse than the West Coast Conference. And nobody wants Arizona in the West Coast Conference. That stinks. So there's that right there. Now, with ASU, Arizona, again, I know a lot of people want to bring ASU with them. I don't, because ASU is a big reason that we are in this predicament to begin with. I would prefer that ASU stays here off to the side, stays in timeout, and they never come out of timeout, basically. You get to hang out with the babysitter that nobody likes, where Arizona gets to hang out on themselves, running their own rules right there. And again, can you imagine how cool it would be to have home and homes at Fog Allen, at at McHale, et cetera, et cetera? Yes, please sign me up. I'm all about that. And also, Big 12 fans are cooler. Now, again, there's cool Pac-12 fans. Not saying they're not, but just by engaging on Twitter, looking at people, you can tell pretty quickly who's who, who's cool, who's not, et cetera. And Big 12 fans care. I think a big part of that is because their advantage is what a lot of the Pac-12 snobs don't think is an advantage, and that's because they come from the quote-unquote truck stop cities. Truck stop city. And that's no good because, again, these are still cities, and these are cities that have, I almost said ravenous fan bases. I wonder if that actually works. Dad, does that work, a ravenous fan base? All right, a ravenous fan base. And that's kind of where, all of that lies. Now, you look at some of these schools, and you might say, all right, well, they're not big time, but they feel like a lot of these stadiums have 85,000 people in it, where you go to some of these Pac-12 ones, and you can get 12,000 people in it. And they're cool to have it. So again, Arizona's got to be able to make the right move for Arizona right there. And honestly, the right move for Arizona is probably not the move that Michael Crow would appreciate. But again, I care about sports. I don't care about pretending to be a premier academic institution. So therefore, I am all about Arizona going on to the Big 12, as is my father as well. He signed off on this. All right. Now, we're going to take a quick little break. And then we're going to talk about what we could possibly look at as a timeline for all of this. Again, this is all conjecture, all surmising. What is the long word of surmising? Surmission? Either way, come back with us. You're listening to Locked On Wildcats. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats. I'm your host, Mike Luke. All right, timelines. A lot of times people, I think, get really caught up in all of this. And they're like, all right, well, what is so the next step should happen right now, right? Well, that doesn't always mean that the next step is going to happen right now. And a big reason why is that these things take time. And a big part of this is, once one deal's done, it's not going to be like just another one's right out the door. It's probably going to take some time. Again, I would imagine, I have no inside information, just reading the tea leaves. I would imagine that this takes, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks, 3-4 weeks. I don't know. Probably something right up to football. I have no clue. But I do believe that it's going to happen. And I believe that not only is it going to happen, I do believe that there will be other schools that will be involved as well. So again, some of these things take patience. Again, I know that people want it to happen right now, but again, as long as it happens, that's all I care about. Because keep in mind, Arizona, either way, is locked into the 23-24 season. It's not like you're going anywhere this right now. You can't leave out the door just this second. But you can do a little bit of the 24-25, something along those, or 24-25. That's where you want to be, though. And I think Arizona's in a good spot to be able to make this one happen. But like I said, there's a lot of things. You got to work out the non-revenue sports traveling. You got to work out a lot of the different things right there. And I think that there's a strong possibility that does occur. And it would also be fun to be in a conference that cares about sports. I know that I sound like I'm beating a dead drum here. I don't know why I'm terrible right now with these, but I know it sounds like I'm just beating a dead horse. Sorry, that this is what Arizona, or that being in a conference that cares. But we've been in a conference for so long that doesn't care, and that's annoying. I mean, again, I'm fine with Bill Walton doing Arizona, Oregon State, but it also shows the lack of respect for a conference when Arizona, UCLA are playing at like 9 o'clock and Bill Walton is on the call and he's butchering everything. We don't like that. And not only do we not like that, I find it annoying and I find it very unbecoming of a product that Arizona fans deserve better at. We deserve better. Right there. Arizona, Kansas, that's on at 5 or 7 on ESPN on a Saturday. It's also on a major network. That is what's cool. That brings you back to the 90s a little bit, where Arizona, UCLA was always going to be appointment television, where, I mean, heck, even Arizona, Stanford was. So, but that's also when you have good teams, when you have schools that actually care. So that's kind of where I think Arizona is right now. I think it probably takes a little bit longer than some people think, but who knows? This is one of those situations that I'd love to be wrong on. So we'll find out. But tomorrow, we are going to preview the Big 12, or the other possible fits for the Big 12. Who fits in, who doesn't, who looks like they're serious about this, who's a backup option. Because, again, there's a lot. It's not just Power 5 schools. There's Group of 5 schools like UConn that is the top of the list. I think with UConn, there's obviously some really big advantages. There's also some drawbacks as well. We'll talk about all of those because, again, not every conference is a perfect fit for everybody, as many of the Pac-12 presidents have put out there before. So we're going to talk about that, a lot of other stuff. But like I said, this is a good time to be an Arizona fan right now. You want to get out of this conference. The conference stinks, and it's imploding itself, and they have only themselves to blame for all of this because the writing's been on the wall for a while. These people just refuse to see it, or if they didn't see it, they didn't want to see it, and that's kind of why we find ourselves in the spot that we are. But as always, you guys have a great rest of your Wednesday. We are in day-by-day mode now. The season is here, obviously, right around the corner, so you're getting us every single day. That could be a good thing. That could be a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. But like I said, have a great day. We will be back with you tomorrow. And thanks as always. I mean this seriously. Thanks for always for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day.